You're on, Alan.
Okay, thanks, Maynard. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Smart District Approach Fast Tracking Innovation 2021, part of Deeper's Innovation Week. So we've got a packed agenda over the next hour or so. You're going to hear from 6 speakers, all representing different smart districts and smart programs under the broader Smart Dublin umbrella. So just to kick off with some scene setting as to, well, what is a smart district and so on. Maynard, maybe you could move on to a couple of slides. There we go. So there's a quick overview as to the different names of the different smart districts and programs we have under the Smart Dublin banner. You'll hear from the different people mentioned. And go to the next slide, please, Maynard. Okay, so just a quick bit of scene setting as to the context behind smart districts. So discrete districts within a city is nothing new. So in Dublin, for example, we have the IFSC, the Italian Quarter, the Liberties, etc. So identifying certain hyper-local geographies within a city is nothing new. So in terms of what is a smart district in the Dublin context, the 4 Dublin authorities are accelerating innovation through trialling solutions to solve local challenges. So for each of the districts that you're going to hear from, we've established a project management office or a PMO office that plays this honest broker facilitator role amongst government, industry, both large and small, business owners, universities, research centres, and of course citizens. So we see, and now we have 5 smart districts as well as a smart tourism programme. We see this distributed local approach generates diverse knowledge creation across different geographies. And also we've got one eye in collaboration between the district leaders, and we're going to touch on that as part of our panel discussion later on. So the little diagram you see there on the bottom right-hand side is trying to articulate, well, how does a smart district deliver against ultimately a smart city, which is what the Smart Dublin programme is all about. So we're talking about living labs, and we're talking about small and concentrated geographies, 1 to 3 years to 3 years in time scale. Solutions, we're trialing and piloting solutions. A lot of it is research-based, so cutting edge, looking at emerging technology to solve urban challenges. And of course, it's all about knowledge creation. If we can do more of those activities across a diverse range of geographies, we can deliver a smart city. Okay, so that's kind of setting the scene as to the context and why we have this smart district approach. So we're going to now hear from the various district program managers. And we're going to kick off first with Edward Emmanuel from the Smart Docklands.
Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, as mentioned, Smart Docklands. This is our Dublin Smart City Testbed. We are proudly co-funded by Dublin City Council, Connect National Research Centre for Future Communications and Networks, and Enable Research for Smart Communities and Smart Cities. Next slide, please. So the district itself is about 3 by 2 kilometers square. Some of you might be aware of this, and good mix of commercial and residential. Next slide. We have a couple of stats here of numbers employed, number of residents, a lot of investment both from public and private segments, and of course Trinity at its doorstep. Next slide. So I want to talk about how our program is based. So there are 3 primary sort of pillars here. The first being connectivity as a baseline. Most, if not all, of our projects have this underpinning of connecting to the internet. That robust internet infrastructure underpins everything that we do. So that is sort of like our North Star. The next bit is our engagement with different stakeholders. So we follow the quadruple helix, speaking to academia, industry, residents, and the public sector to kind of get that holistic view. And through those conversations, that engagement, we kind of get a better feel of how to steer our program, and it sort of goes to the third point, our use cases and projects that come about in the program the sort of challenges that different stakeholders face and what we can do to address those. Next slide. So I'll run through really quickly on some of our fast track innovation examples. Next slide. So we have here our 5G small cell test bed. So this happened, genesis of this was back in 2017. We put a call out to the market for enabling sort of gigabit connectivity in the Docklands and wider city. So we managed to engage an organization called Densair, and together with Connect and Dublin City Council, we rolled out our first sort of 5G test bed in Dublin and Ireland, which encompass putting up small cells. So small cells are like mini cellular tower sites. And you can see over there in the picture the coverage that we had in the Docklands. So in the midst of rolling this out, we put out about 20 small cells, and we uncovered a number of teething problems or challenges, whether that was to access power or access fiber optics to backhaul the data back into the internet sort of thing. It uncovered a couple of things that we managed to capture in what you see there, our 5G and future connectivity discussion paper. So that paper kind of encompassed all our learnings, and again kind of highlighting the opportunities and why this was important, not just for Dublin, but for Ireland Inc. on enabling sort of this future connectivity to catch that next wave of growth. Next slide. So on the back of that learning, we collaborated with what we call TIP Telecom Infra Project to kind of scale out beyond the Docklands. We have here our example deployment, Telebelly deployment in Westmoreland and Fleet Street. So here again, it's about deploying shared infrastructure, shared assets and connected infrastructure ideally, and we get more than one telecom operator to share within the assets. Again, this will solve a number of issues that we captured in the discussion paper, like clutter and that access to power and fiber. And this was captured again, next slide, being captured in this playbook, not just for local authorities in Ireland, but across the world on our learnings up to this point of how to sort of roll this out in the best way possible. And we try and compress that in a general way as possible so that it can be replicated beyond on an international setting. Next slide. Another big piece that we learned in our Docklands trial was the need to have a digital layer on our assets. So we had to kind of know where the fiber optic cables were, the ducting, our traffic lights, our lampposts. So this is an example. It's a screenshot of asset registry in the Docklands, which showcases these different assets. So this is in the midst of being rolled out live together, of course, with our with Dublin City Council's own telecoms unit to kind of sit on top and manage all of this telecoms proposals and rolling out. So all of this kind of started off with this work we did in the Docklands to kind of scale up to see how we could address these issues. So it was a great success to see it come to fruition in this way. Next slide. So engagement, if you click along, we had a next slide. I think it goes, we had a number of workshops, obviously a mixture of in-person and online, and we spoke to, again, the different stakeholders, as I mentioned, and that helped to kind of solidify sort of challenges that people highlighted, and of course tapping to their ideas as well on how to address those challenges. Next slide. An example of this was our Academy of the Near Future education program. So this started out through our conversations with different groups, people who, whether it was residents or industry, people who are telling us, okay, you know, sometimes this smart city thing or the Internet of Things is not as accessible as you want it to be. So it was trying to get your head wrapped around sort of the concepts. So we had a trial sort of workshop to tease out what could be what will become this Academy of the Near Future education program to help demystify what all of this is about. And the first incarnation of this is for transition year students called the Visioneers Program. And again, it's teaching them the base blocks, whether it's low cost sensors and how that connects to the internet, and that they too can have a input to steer their local communities and make a difference in their town setting as well. Next slide. Another example is our Ring Boys project. So as many as I think 500 of these Ring Boys get tampered with or stolen in Dublin City per annum. So this was pre-COVID. And then we had put a call to the market for vendors to come and propose solutions that could help prevent this theft. So we were funded through the Public Services Innovation Fund. Next slide. And the interesting thing about this is an innovation procurement framework, where it's phase 1, phase 2. In phase 1, multiple vendors come in to trial and test their solutions, again, coming up from the Docklands. This is an example of a vendor, M Semicon, very simple concept with a sensor in the Ring Boys to sound the alarm if it's being tampered with, as well as a dashboard to show where the Ring Boy is based. And so vendors who make it past phase 1, which is in the midst of happening at the moment, go into phase 2, which allows it to be purchased for, in this case, up to 10 local authorities around Ireland will be allowed to purchase from the approved vendors. So it's a very exciting piece that came out again from the Docklands. Next slide. Last but not least is our Smart Pedal Pitch and Dublin Cycling Buddy. So this happened through a call again to the market for cycling related solutions back in the summer of 2019. Here you have Jan from Emotional, who was pitching his product about intelligent bike routing based on segregated lanes, traffic, and other data variables. Next slide. And we incubated our localized version of this Dublin Cycling Buddy for over 12 months, getting a lot of feedback, whether from residents and Dublin Cycling Campaign. And we had it launched by the previous Lord Mayor in the summer of this year. And there was a lot of great uptake. Right now, we're in the midst of our next big challenge. If you haven't got onto it yet, it's as simple as clocking in one ride on the Dublin Cycling Buddy app. It's just trying to nudge behaviors so that people could give cycling a chance as they go back to their places of work, their campuses and school, and you'll be eligible for a raffle to win some exciting prizes. So if you haven't done so, check it out. Next slide. And last but not least, some of the recognition across the years. It's been a great ride, and I think the most recent, of course, is our shortlisting for Dublin City shortlisting as European Capital of Innovation. I'm really happy that Smart Docklands played a significant role in the bid, and as Smart Dublin as a whole. And we just heard today that Academy of the Near Future got nominated as well for Smart Cities Expo projects category for education and engagement. So hopefully we'll hear some good news from that as well. And I think that's it for next slide. Yeah, that's me. I think it's on to Connor now.
That's perfect. Thanks, Edward. And it's fantastic to see the program doing so well on all those awards. Thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. It's been an absolutely incredible week already with so many brilliant events, and really understanding and learning more on how to incorporate innovation in everything we do is so important going forward, and especially with COP26, we can see the challenges coming down the line for our cities and why innovation is so important. I'm just going to give a little update on some of the Smart Sandyford projects and a little bit of a background on how the districts all work together and Smart Sandyford specifically. Slide, please. So we use this quadruple helix engagement approach, which basically has our key stakeholder groups of government. In my case, it's Dún Laoghaire Down County Council, civil society or the general public, our industry partners, and then academia. So our funding partners are Dún Laoghaire and Connect and Enable, which are Trinity-based research centres. And really what this is all about is putting people first in using technology to develop smart cities. In each of the districts, we open digital infrastructure and to enable new services, but also to make people aware of how technology works and how they can incorporate it in their own lives and their own businesses. So for example, in Ireland, we're kind of at the early stage of adaptation of IoT. So what's required is educating people, showing people how it works through proof of concepts projects at the small scale, and we've done that very well over the last couple of years. And now what we're seeing is these projects being tested properly at the front line of through the districts and the local councils, but also with companies as well. So they're becoming more ingrained through that development of understanding and practicality as the technology matures. So within each of the districts, we have different funding partners and different stakeholders, and that is reflected through the different objectives of each of the districts. So we each have a target objective that we're trying to meet through our projects, and we work together in, maybe I'm approached by somebody who'd be more applicable to a health project and they'd go to D8, for example, or if they were looking for data, maybe they'd go to DCU, whereas in Smart Sandyford, we focus on mobility projects and climate change projects. And that's kind of how we all work together on these. Slide, please. Just to give you a very quick example of a recent project that we had, it's called Plastic Raiders, working with UCD, and to take you through kind of the 5 main points of even a small project like this. Basically, we had to engage with all of our stakeholders to get an understanding of how plastic rubbish is being disposed of within the county. At the small scale, we took the marketplace for the Sunday market in Dún Laoghaire, and basically we were looking to track where rubbish goes from when people buy something at even a market. And then, after a trial like this, we can blow that up to the larger scale. But for the trial, what we did was put trackers, QR codes on plastic rubbish at each of the stalls. So that meant engaging with the local council to be allowed engage with their market, and engaging with the market managers, engaging with the vendors, and then of course engaging with the general public as well. So there's a huge amount of outreach to get a project like this up and running. We then gamified the system. So we gave people basically an incentive for engaging with the project. Basically, they were given any time they engaged with the project, they sent a donation to a local wildlife charity, and that really encouraged people to get involved very well. And we were able to follow where the rubbish went from that red area on the map, and we had certain bins laid out, and then we were also able to find any that had been left over once the cleanup had been done. And that really all feeds back into our sustainability and our SDG development goals. The next layer on top of that then is the open litter map. So we have people going to be tracking this using their phones, tagging the litter where it's disposed of. And then once that's all finished, we'll review and expand to the next level, maybe in a wider geographic space or increased gamification of that system. So that's just a small example of a light touch, really, project that can actually touch an awful lot of people, increasing education of how technology works and having the obvious benefit of hopefully reducing litter in the long term. Slide, please. Next. So here are a few other high-level projects that I'll just touch on briefly. We're working on a huge range of mobility and transport projects. We have e-cargo bikes, which we're monitoring the usage of, trying to replace vans and standard delivery vehicles with a more sustainable trial that's coming to an end at the moment. So we're doing workshops, analyzing the data coming out of the trackers and looking at the carbon offset that the bikes had. We've also got a huge amount of mobility data that we've gathered through surveys, sensors, working with the council on their own data, and we're now bringing all of these sets together so that we can have much more informed decision making in the long term. And some really interesting findings already. The Smart Sandyford program has been running for the last 2 years, and we're seeing the data sets build up that we have really interesting sets that we can overlay in various different capacities now, and it's actually showing us really the value of different projects, and we can see quite quickly what impact different triggers have. Certainly, it's very interesting in Dún Laoghaire where we have pedestrianization of roads and that kind of thing. and what impact that has for local business and for the health of the community. We also do a huge amount of IoT deployments. The 3 on the map there are just 3 manhole sensors in Sandyford, but we have air quality, motion detection, and about 5 different projects underway, all on IoT deployments, which is a new way of gathering data to build up that bank even further. Next slide, please. On the larger scale then, we have 3 EU projects, one more, thank you. Precinct, Score and Pro Bono. So Precinct and Score just kicked off this summer, and Pro Bono is going to be kicking off next year. To give you a flavour of the scale of these projects, 5 experts in Pro Bono's case, 5 experts reviewed 170 applicants. 114 of those were shortlisted, and we were one of 3 that were funded. So what that means is, while we're talking about the districts and testing things within Dublin, Dublin itself is becoming a test bed for all of Europe through these projects. We've expertise coming from industry partners and other councils from across Europe, all bringing their know-how, expertise and technology and applying it within Dublin. 2 of the projects are on resilience and one's on sustainability. But basically, our brand, the Smart Dublin brand, is bringing in this huge network of people that are all sharing this information, and really we're beginning to see the benefits of harnessing that and developing it even further. One more slide, please. And the ink is probably not quite dry yet, but we are happy to announce that Smart Sandyford has just gone into its 2nd phase, and we'll be having an event in the new year to go into further detail of how that'll work. But basically, we will be hiring a few new team members, developing out the scope a little bit further, and looking forward to working with all of our existing network, as well as meeting a few new people as well. So if you'd like to get involved in that 2nd phase, please do reach out to me. Slide please, on connor.dowling@smartsandyford.ie. Thanks very much. I'm going to hand over now to Kieran Mahan from Smart DCU, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor. Now, as an introduction to Smart DCU, it's funded by Dublin City Council, DCU Alpha and Insight. In other words, local government, industry and academia all combining to make Smart DCU a great place to fast-track smart city innovations. Next. Now, Dublin City University is located on the north side of Dublin, halfway between the airport and the city centre. It's home to over 18,500 students from 55 different countries and over 2,000 staff. So the idea is to use the university campus as a test bed for smart city innovations, where the campus is the city and the students and staff are the citizens. Next. Now, this is because it's not just a great university. The campus is a microcosm of a city. Everything a city has except in miniature: accommodation, banking, retail, road networks, sports venues. And another unique selling point is that all of this is 100% owned and controlled by the university. Only one permission is needed. Now, this gives it an agility that greatly simplifies and speeds up the deployment of smart city propositions. Next. Now, it's also a gateway to the Insight SFI Research Centre for Data Analytics. This is the largest of its type in Europe. And as you will see from this presentation, they are very active supporters of Smart DCU. Their vision is empowering citizens through smarter societies. Next. So if you visit the campus today, you'll see a fleet of e-scooters being used by students and staff to move around the campus. Now, while this may look like a free and fun perk for them, it is in fact an artificial intelligence-powered e-scooter research pilot. The objective is to improve e-scooter safety standards. It combines the strengths of 4 organisations: Europe's largest e-scooter operator Tier, Irish micromobility tech platform Luna, Insight and Smart DCU. Next. So these scooters are being equipped with artificial intelligence enabled computer vision. And this advanced technology is being refined to identify hazards like pedestrians in the path of the scooter. And because the technology is so advanced, it can also be used for detection of footpath widening, hazard detection, and route obstacles. Now, e-scooters are not yet legal on Irish roads, but as soon as they're made street legal, this pilot will be extended and used for inter-campus travel. Now, it's a very ambitious project, and in future phases, it will seek to turn the e-scooter fleet into a mobile, real-time sensor network, and thereby assist the city across multiple areas, from real-time road conditions to street infrastructure mapping. Next. Now, another initiative you may see on the campus is the Renault Mobilized e-cars. They are shared electric cars that can be used by DCU staff for campus and inter-campus travel. It's a collaboration with Renault to understand how shared e-cars can be a more sustainable and accessible type of mobility, while also reducing the environmental impact. Now, shared e-cars are what many people believe are part of the way forward for intelligent transportation, and a very important component of mobility as a service, where the individual never needs to own a vehicle and yet still enjoys the convenience and comfort they would expect if they did own their own vehicle. The pilot will seek to achieve many smart DCU objectives, including understanding the implications and logistics of moving the entire DCU fleet to all electric, calculating the reduction in carbon footprint, and Insight will do an analysis of how this type of shared mobility can improve sustainability and the efficiencies of smart cities. We'll also be seeing how we can use this to move a modal shift to people away from public transport. Next. So continuing with the theme of wheels, keep an eye out for delivery robots on the campus. Now, these are small cooler box units that can collect and deliver food and packages. It is predicted that these robots will revolutionize deliveries, offering people convenient new services that improve everyday life, make local deliveries faster and more cost efficient and sustainable. So we're piloting two types, each one with a different technology. The hosted kitchen bot is trialing teleoperation technology for delivering goods outdoors. So this navigates the campus by streaming a video feed over a mobile phone network to a remote driver who then steers the robot. While the Transboco robot is utilizing computer vision technology to learn and understand how to navigate indoors, navigating autonomously around people and public spaces without a human driver. However, I see the convergence of these two types of technologies, where the robot navigates autonomously until it encounters an issue and then needs the assistance of a human. And in the not too distant future, homes and businesses will have delivery robot or drone docking stations to accept deliveries without any human intervention. Next. So as mentioned by me earlier, we're using the campus as a microcosm of a city. A key enabler of this is the concept of a digital twin, where all the independent silos of information are brought together to make a smart city ecosystem. So earlier this year, we entered into an exciting new research partnership with global software engineering firm Bentley Systems, KTU University in Lithuania, and Insight. The objective is to build Ireland's first higher educational digital campus. Now, this collaboration involves the creation of a digital twin, which will be a complete 3D version of the DCU campuses. It will incorporate real-time data gathered from IoT sensors on footfall, congestion points, energy, water usage, and lots of other important data. And as we gather more and more data, Insight will use their considerable predictive analytics capabilities to simulate different scenarios. We've now completed the 3D models of all the campuses and will soon begin to scan the building interiors. Next. So, due to time constraints, this is just a quick overview of a small part of Smart DCU, which is quickly evolving into a complex smart city ecosystem. Please remember, new partners are very welcome to join the ecosystem. I'd like to thank you for your time and handing over now to Aisling Highland from Smart Balberg.
Thanks, Kieran. So yeah, my name is Aisling Hyland and I'm Digital Strategy Manager for Fingal County Council. And within my role, I manage digital initiatives across the county, and one of them is the Smart Balberg District. So next slide, please. I'm going to just give a very quick overview of Balberg and why we chose it as a Smart Dublin District. And I'll just then highlight some of our projects on our public Trello board, and I'll spotlight one or two of those projects. So next slide. And next slide as well, sorry. And you can mark the next slide as well. I just wanted to highlight where Balberg was for anyone on the call that didn't know. We are located up there at the top, North County Dublin, and our district, I suppose, is focused on the whole town itself of Balberg. So it's quite a unique geographical area. We've got obviously coastline there. You can see we've got main street location, urban kind of town centre, and then around Balberg itself is quite suburban and rural. So we've got a lot of agricultural land as well. So it's quite a unique geographical area that we can trial and test different types of projects. So if it's to do with flooding and sensors, to do with coastal erosion, or to do with agriculture, or to do with the high street. So I suppose it's good geographical location, and then it's obviously has its own challenges around that too. So next slide. And I suppose apart from the geography of Balberg and what makes it unique for us, and why fundamentally we chose it to become a Smart Dublin District, was I suppose the rate of change Balberg has seen over the past 25 years. So it's seen a huge expansion in population growth. It's one of the fastest growing towns in Ireland, actually in the EU. And it has one of the most diverse populations as well, and the youngest population in Ireland in a town. So that makes it quite unique. And when we think of smart cities and smart places, we found it was a really good location for us to try and develop a smart district that's really focused on community and bringing projects to the fore that are primarily focused on the community that live inside this town centre. And next slide. And another reason we've, I suppose, focused on Balberg was because there's a huge amount of change happening as well over the next 5 years. So this slide shows you the Balberg rejuvenation plan, and in 2019 over 25% of the population took part in this Balberg rejuvenation survey, and it really focused our minds as to the vibrant population, but that they really wanted to engage with the local authority. And I suppose that's why this district is very much focused on this community, and I suppose continuing that engagement that has taken place from the work of Balberg. So the Smart Balberg District is aligned to the Balberg programme, and pretty much all of our district projects, objectives, our programme framework can all be linked back to consultation with public that have said they wanted to see, change in certain areas. Next slide, please. So just to highlight, these are the core themes of Smart Balberg. So we are focused on community building. So the district will build the town's identity, forward-looking, young, dynamic place, job creation and economic growth. So a lot of our projects are focused on enhancing job creation and making sure Balberg is seen as an investment destination, and improve service and public realm. So delivering better and more efficient services and I'll showcase some of that in the next slide. So, and as well, I suppose in creating our districts, and I know this has been mentioned over the past couple of presentations, this is that quadruple helix of innovation approach, and we set up a steering group this time last year now with representatives from industry, academia, local government and citizens. So we meet monthly basically to look at the Smart Balberg district, to look at the projects we've done so far, the progress, and to look at the future of the district and where we should be focusing. But as well as that, I suppose we mainly focus on how do we engage with the community? So is it through the library, through the Brigand newsletters, through workshops? So I'd say this steering group is a first interaction, but we are constantly engaging with community through workshops and events and town meetings. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is our Smart District public Trello board. So we set this up almost a year ago now, and it has, you'll see there on the left, we've got our, general information on Smart Balberg, our program framework. We've got our governance documents, so all of our, steering group meeting minutes, all of that stuff. So we update this board regularly, and I'll highlight a couple of the projects here. So we're focusing on everything here from public realm to community, mobility, green initiatives, and the kind of jobs and investment as well. So what we've kind of been working on over the last 12 months, we've installed an IoT network in the district, and we're promoting that to local entrepreneurs. And we've enhanced the public Wi-Fi in the town. We've also, similar to some of the projects you've heard, we've been involved in that connected ring buoys. So we've put our sensors on the ring buoys, and we've put some traffic sensors in the main street. So we're starting to collect data around the town. But I suppose mainly we've tried now to focus on what sort of community projects can we do, and can we focus on some of those challenges that we've been hearing about through our engagement with the community. So I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 projects now. Next slide. So one of those projects is the creation of the Balberg 3D model. And this model was funded through the Public Service Innovation Fund. We developed this 3D model to solve that challenge that people were having of, okay, we've all these public realm projects planned over the next 5 years. Buildings are being demolished. There's this time where people can't see maybe progress happening. They don't know what this new space, this public realm space, is going to look like. So the 3D model was a visual tool to help citizens see what the town centre, specifically in this example, that's the Quay Street area moving on to the harbour, that image there. So currently that's a car park at the moment in Balberg. So this is an example of how it could be, how it may look in the future, and to show I suppose that progress over the next couple of months and years, because some of these projects are 4 and 5 years before they come to fruition. So the model itself, next slide, can be viewed in 3 different platforms. So there's a web viewer that people can just simply Google Balberg 3D model, and they're brought to where the web viewer is, or they can look on the public Trello board where there's links to all of our projects, and they can kind of step into the environment similar to like a Google Maps environment. So you can just click and and walk around the town and see what it will look like. There's a desktop viewer that's kind of a step up, and staff, architects and planners kind of use that. And then there's the VR headset. So we plan to bring this VR to the Balberg hub. So people, if they're in the town and they want to find it out, okay, what's the progress of some of these public realm plans, they can literally put on the VR headset and get immersed into the environment. Next slide there. And the model itself, I'm not going to show a video of it, but you can just see here, this is the first textured layer, and then it's quite blocky, and then our second layer on the next slide is a bit more textured. It's got obviously photography layered on top, and then the next layer is just a little bit more, I suppose, realistic in its shape. So just another click. That's the third layer there. You go back to it. Yeah, so you can see shadowing and shading. So I suppose that just gives you an overview of what the model looks like. It's been well received so far. So we launched in June of this year, and we got some great feedback, and we're actually adding some additional features to it now, some consultation features where people can have their say on these future plans and developments for the town centre. So it's been a really useful public engagement tool to keep people informed about these changes. And it's hopefully going to develop further as we get more plans for the area. And next slide. Yes, so the next project I wanted to highlight, and again, it's around our citizen focus. We wanted to engage younger people in particular, especially because of the demographics in Balberg, around what is smart, what is smart cities, smart places, what sort of projects are going on in the district, and what sort of technologies are used in general, and inform our younger population. So we teamed up with Academy of the Near Future and with What the Hack around an event, and we called it the Smart World Brigand Transition Year Design Challenge. And this was a week-long event where Academy of the Near Future and What the Hack went into schools and delivered a two-part session. So it was the Visioneers session and a pitching session as well. So these schools were competing against each other. So in the first half of the day, they would get an overview of the smart cities and given some education. And in the second part, they would get exercises in how to perfect their pitch and how to come up with an idea that would try and solve a local challenge to them. And with all of this, we wanted to feed all that information back into the council so that we can, I suppose, hear all the voices, because we tend to hear maybe certain voices for public consultation, and maybe the younger age group, like in transition years, aren't always heard as loud as other voices. So we've now gathered all that feedback, and we're looking at areas where we can pilot projects based on what has come back from this challenge. So next slide. And next slide. Yes, so over 130 students took part in this. We had 3 secondary schools, and the winning idea was around food waste. And the team involved there had a great idea around trying to make innovation around food waste, and having a platform where people can be better informed about what food they are wasting, how they can reduce it, and how they can actually give back their waste food to other sources, so it's not going to landfill. So that's just an example of one of the great ideas. There are many, but there had to be only one winner, and we're now looking to partner with and try and trial these sorts of ideas that came back and see if we can expand on them. Next slide there. And the second project I was just going to highlight was we took part, or we did a hackathon for Balberg, and a community-based hackathon. And again, we got some great ideas from the community, and we're now looking to develop them further. The whole idea around the community hackathon was around the challenge of community. So how can we build a stronger and more vibrant community in Balberg, and what the sorts of solutions that came back were really interesting from the groups. And just go on there. Next slide. And this was actually our winning pitch. So this group had wanted to create a think tank to build civic pride. So we're looking now to create a podcast for Balberg, or indeed to look at other ways to support that, to build town hall community engagement activities, and to improve features on a local Fix My Street website that the council uses. So this was the winning pitch, but again, we had multiple ideas, and I suppose the idea of these two projects are just to gather that engagement with the public. And I realise I've gone over, so I think that's the end of my presentation there. I would just like to highlight, if anyone wants to get in touch, they can contact smart.balberg. Thanks. And I'll hand over to Nicola now.
Thanks, Ashton. Okay, so I'm Nicola Graham. I'm the Smart City Operations Manager for Dublin City Council, and I'm representing the Smart D8 district today, which is one of our newest districts under the umbrella Smart Dublin. While Dublin City Council doesn't have a remit in terms of health, it was thought that environment and the services that we provide in terms of parks, recreational facilities, local economy, all contribute towards a person's health and well-being, overall health and well-being. The four main partners are Dublin City Council's South Central Area Office, the Smart City Unit, the Digital Hub, and St James's Hospital. And we have a number of associate partners who I'll talk about later on. Next slide, please. So as I said, Smart D8 is the newest smart district under the Smart Dublin umbrella. It's focused on health and well-being. It was initiated by four lead partners: Dublin City Council's South Central Area Office, the Smart City Unit, and Digital Hub, and St James's Hospital. It was established in 2020 and officially launched in March 2021. A lot of discussion around the development of the Smart D8 district happened long before the district was actually established. I know Stephen Coyne from South Central Area Office was really involved in it. Caroline Viewer from the Digital Hub was a huge support, and even Edward, who was speaking earlier on, had a role to play in terms of developing the scope when it came to the Smart D8 district. But when we met with stakeholders in January in 2020 to try and get people committed to the project, as we were, 3 months later, the pandemic hit, and I think that really contributed to get people's buy-in and to see the real potential for a health innovation district that would provide a better quality of life for the communities in the D8 district. Like some of the other districts, there's a good mix of historical areas, but there's also a lot of regeneration happening in the D8 area. Next slide, please, Maynard. And this is the Smart D8 ecosystem. In addition to the partners that I've already mentioned, the HSE Digital Transformation Unit, St Patrick's Mental Health Care, Health Innovation Hub, GEC, Tyndall, NCAD and Trinity College. And again, like the other smart districts, we use the quadruple helix model, bringing together industry partners, academia, community and public authorities. Next slide, please. So when the district was first established, we did a community survey to try and identify what the challenges were for people in the community. This was done because of COVID. We couldn't do any in-person engagement activities, so it had to be done through our survey through our social media and web pages. And we also employed somebody to make calls to the older community who might not necessarily be involved or as proficient with digital tools. And the first 3 pillars that were identified to support our smart call were mental health, population health, and the impact on COVID-19. These were the ideas that people had the most issues around and wanted, I suppose, solutions to try and address these challenges. Underpinning that then is the community and smart cities. So a lot of the projects that we're focusing on are enabled by technology, and the environment that they're deployed in is also underpins the success of the projects. Next slide, please. So as part of the pilot call results, we received 37 applications. 10 proposals were evaluated and shortlisted by different members of the ecosystem who were experts in the particular area, whether it was population health, whether it was mental health, or in the results of COVID impact. And 5 pilots have been selected. Next slide, please. So the pilot call for the mental health pillar, 3 projects were selected. Waste Wellbeing launched in October this year, and it's a pilot that will bring primary and secondary school students together with the older community, and together they'll learn about mental health and wellbeing. The virtual reality meditation platform, which is led by Solace VR and supported by the Digital Hub, is a VR project using a VR headset, which will allow people who are experiencing maybe confusion or in their own environment to be able to put on the VR headset and escape to a nice and relaxed environment, even for a little while. And that will be available, I think, in different communities across the 8. The mental health literacy program is aiming to empower people to make better choices around their treatment in relation to mental health and social subscribing. St. Patrick's Mental Health Services are also the lead partner on that. Next slide, please. So Heart of Our City is another pilot supported by St. James's Hospital, Novotaris and the Irish Heart Foundation. And it's focused on improving people's knowledge and awareness of the ranges of resources in the community to help support cardiovascular healthcare and to try and reduce their admittance to hospital. And then Dublin City Council is supporting Civic Dollar, which is a social currency community platform. And the pilot encourages people to get outdoors active and improve overall health and well-being. By using a mobile app, you can earn Civic Dollars and claim rewards, and then you can redeem those rewards either for yourself with local businesses, or you can donate your Civic Dollars and earn rewards for a local community group. Next slide, please. So the Civic Dollar pilot will be launching this November. You can sign up today. The app is available on Android and on the Apple Store. It's supported by DCC Parks, the South Central Area Office, and the Smart City Unit. It's been trialled in Belfast originally, and it's aimed at residents, local businesses and community groups. It aims to improve health and well-being of residents and encourage them to use Dublin City Council's parks and open spaces. It aims to support local businesses by, if they participate, and provide rewards for residents or for community groups. It encourages people to go to their business. And then community groups can be rewarded through people's donations, and that can give them additional supports to do leadership training or things like that. As I said, initially it'll start with 5 designated parks from DCC in the Dublin 8 area, and it will be launching later this month. Next slide, please. And that's it for me. So if you want any more information, you can contact us at info@smarty8.ie. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nicola. It's amazing to see everything that's going on in D8. Hi everyone, my name is Barry. I'm the Smart Tourism Program Manager for Dublin. Today I'm just going to do a very brief overview of the kind of year that we've had, the first year of our program, some of the projects we've done, and then some of the proposed projects we have for next year as well. So next slide, please, Maynard. So you might all be wondering, like, what is smart tourism? And the first thing I'll say off the bat is it's not about shoehorning technology into the tourism industry. What we're essentially about as a proof of concept in Dublin within our program is about trying to create a model which ultimately drives positive transformation in Dublin City. What makes us different is that to do that, we use technology, we use data analysis, and we use digitalization to help build more equitable destinations. And why are we doing all of this? Like, what's the ultimate reason? Well, we're trying to build more inclusive prosperity for the people who live in our cities, and ultimately better experiences for those who come to visit Dublin. Next slide, please. So what do we focus on in our first year of our program? We identified 4 key areas we were going to work on. The main 2 areas we're going to talk about today, because we don't have too much time, is just the areas of digital trails and data analysis. But we also work in the area of orientation and digital transformation a lot as well. So next slide there, please, Maynard. Thanks. So what kind of a year did we have? The first year of the program, up until the start of our program, smart tourism didn't really exist as a concept. Dublin is the only and the first city in Europe to have a dedicated smart tourism program. So this year was all about proving the concept of what it is and what it means, how transformational it can be. So this year, for example, we spoke at Harvard University. We launched several papers with universities, and the big ticket item was ultimately we were shortlisted for the European Capital of Smart Tourism Award as well, which I'll talk about briefly later. Next slide. So just briefly to talk about something that a lot of other speakers spoke about as well, which is the network and the network of collaboration that allows us to roll out all the projects that we work on. In Dublin, we're really lucky. Our smart tourism program is embedded in a huge network of collaborators across the districts, across program leaders, across our external engagement and our tourism industry as well. And this isn't just a gesture slide to say that we collaborate. For example, one of the biggest things we did this year was the European bid, and each person, each logo on this page was involved in our bid to become European Capital of Smart Tourism this year. So it's very transformational, just the level of collaboration we have across all of our networks and districts. Next slide, please. And then moving on into what are the actual core projects we work on? What do we actually do in smart tourism? Here's a really good project I love to talk about, which just gives you an overview of the sort of stuff we do. So we were the first ever city to work with the company Clear Channel to make sure that these digital kiosks were available and optimized for tourists. So we developed a specific UX interface, which can now be rolled out across not only Dublin City and all the local authorities, but also across Ireland as well. Next slide, please, Maynard. So one of the biggest things we did this year was we worked on the bid to be recognised as the European Capital of Smart Tourism. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but being recognised and going through the process and being shortlisted was phenomenal for Dublin in and of itself. Unfortunately, Bordeaux and Valencia took it away, but the process of going through the bid was huge for Dublin. And one of the big things it really did was gave us access to this European best practice framework that Connor kind of talked about in terms of the brand bringing home all of that best practice. And the other thing it did as well was it just drove collaboration across all of our program partners, which was brilliant as well. Next slide, please. So one of the other big areas we work on is just data and insights. So we work across sensors and IoT, as Edward said. We use open data using our Dub-linked existing platform. As well as that, we always have public-private partnerships as well, which help drive tourism insights to help understand our recovery. So we work a lot with Grant Thornton and MasterCard through the Economic Monitor to help drive some of the best tourism insights that you can possibly get. So we're extremely proud of that collaboration. Next slide, please. And finally, one of the big outputs we have this year is each month we put together a tourism recovery spotlight, which looks at all of the available tourism data, which is as up to date as possible, and paints a picture of tourism, Dublin's tourism economy recovery in real time. So this is different to like the traditional latent kind of data that we would normally get in tourism. What's different about this report is it goes out to kind of a lot of decision makers across local authorities and across our state agencies as well. So it gives them, puts real-time tourism information into their hands at the end of every month. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of what's in this report, some of the best tourism data we have in the country comes from the Dublin Economic Monitor. Here we have a slide on just MasterCard spend, which is extremely valuable spend if you're looking at tourism data. So this is very, very valuable stuff for us in trying to identify and predict the tourism recovery of Dublin City. Thanks, next slide. So one of the other big areas we worked on, I said there was two kind of big areas we worked on this year. One was data, one was digital trails. Digital trails are becoming, predominantly because of COVID, extremely popular across Europe and in Ireland. In Dublin and Ireland, we're trying to catch up on this trend. So as a smart tourism program, we decided to focus in on this exclusively this year. And we've done tons of work on digital trails specifically. We published the first ever academic paper on digital trails along with the Technological University of Dublin, which was published in Boston University Hospitality Review. And we wrote the first ever digital trail development toolkit for technology that has gone live now and is available for everyone to download and use to build their own best practice digital trails throughout Ireland, not just in Dublin. Next slide, please, Maynard. So why were we doing all that? Well, ultimately, a lot of our work on digital trails was contextualized by the development of probably the biggest digital trail tender in Europe, which we produced in partnership with Docklands, which Edward is on, Fáilte Ireland and DCC as well this year. So we're delighted to say that we've now kind of finished this process of developing this tender, and next year we'll be moving into actually building this heritage trail app for Dublin, which I know my program and partners are all extremely excited about. So it should be a huge piece of work for us for next year. Next slide, please. So last slide, I promise, what are we actually going to focus on for 2022? Today, I only got to show you probably 4 projects out of 20 that we worked on this year. Next year, we're going to augment our program slightly based on a lot of our experiences that we've had, based on what the industry and the environment is demanding, and based on a lot of the feedback we got from the experience of going to Brussels and competing with the other best cities in Europe in this kind of category. So next year, we're going to focus on digital transformation. We're going to do much more work on data and insights. We're also going to focus on sustainability, and then ultimately more engagement and deeper collaboration with our network as well. So I believe that's my last slide, and that's it from me. Maynard, move on. Thank you very much. If you need to contact me, please just send me an email or reach out directly. Thank you.
Okay. Wow, that's fantastic, Barry, and fantastic overviews by each of the speakers. Conscious of time, and also it's not often that we manage to get these 6 people in one place. So we're going to try and get under the hood a little bit and pose some some exam questions that the guys can share some nuggets with you. So hopefully over the next 15 minutes or so, we'll get under the hood, what's really working, maybe what's not working across some of these programs. So if the audience could just bear with us. So maybe to kick off, to Conor and Kieran, the value of the ecosystem. So look, it's clear from all the presentations, not just from DCU and Sandyford, huge value in creating an ecosystem of stakeholders working together on complex urban challenges. Can you give us one example of one project opportunity that arose just because of the DCU ecosystem or the Smart Sandyford ecosystem? So maybe Kieran, kick off first.
Yeah. It's very easy to identify. Bentley, we're already working with Smart Dublin, and we were to introduce them, and then they saw the Smart DCU ecosystem, totally different. We had research capabilities, so it made it a no-brainer for them to invest actually money and resources and software and assistance with us in hosting in their project. I have to say, like, it's the Smart Dublin ecosystem, we're just part of it, and that's the big brand that we were able to leverage.
Okay,
yeah,
super. Conor, yeah, your side.
For me, it's probably the EU research projects. Having got the SCORE project initially with some of the local people in UCD that we already knew, Francesco Pila, we were then able to sort of put ourselves on the map, really. And now we have people from all across Europe reaching out, trying to get involved, looking to use Dublin as a testbed, as I mentioned. And really the ecosystem's almost growing legs itself, which is really positive to see and a good reflection on the work we're doing.
Yeah, actually, Barry's slides are in my head. Barry, you had a very impressive slide with your ecosystem. Do you want to touch on that question as well, maybe?
Yeah, just very briefly, same kind of answer that the guys gave, but it's kind of it's so built into the Smart Dublin framework that you almost don't notice it growing legs, as Conor said. We noticed specifically with the bid that we pulled together for Europe that because we were in such a tight time frame, having all of that existing ecosystem meant that I didn't have to go looking for projects. I could just very easily kind of lift the phone. And it was one of the reasons I suppose we were shortlisted, is because of demonstrating that we had such a kind of proud and elaborate network. So yeah, same answer as Conor, but very much something we're going to prioritize next year in terms of the development of that network. Okay, super. Okay, moving on to maybe a different topic. So on topic of citizen engagement. So at the opening remarks, we said, look, citizens are a part of our world. We really need to hear their voice. So maybe to Nicola and Aisling. So citizen engagement, big part of the Smart City program. Any examples in Balberg and DH you can share with us? What kind of citizen engagement did you do? How effective was it? How did it influence your program? So Aisling, do you want to kick off?
Yeah. Well, what I would say, before COVID, it was a lot easier to engage, because I definitely find that citizen engagement, when you're in front of someone, you get an awful lot more information off them rather than if an online survey. So that did definitely hamper over the last couple of months, not being able to get out to events and engage with the public. But pre-COVID, we engaged via literally going out and meeting people. The rejuvenation survey that I mentioned, we had people at the train stations at 6 o'clock in the morning with surveys and asking people for their feedback on what are the challenges in Balberg. And so that sort of engagement is really useful. And then obviously online engagement through social media and surveys. But again, I find that kind of just touches the people that are there that have already engaged. So to get the people that haven't engaged, you kind of need to go where they are. So be that them getting on a train or outside of SuperValu or wherever, that tends to be where you get the people that you may not reach on your social media channels. So definitely this year, the fact that we were able to do the hackathon and get into schools was really important, and the amount of engagement and feedback we got has now made us think about 2022 and the sorts of projects we're going to focus on, because we've gotten that, you know, real engagement from them. So yeah, that's my 2 cents anyway.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, wow. And Nicola, any thoughts from D8?
Very similar to Aisling, I suppose, in terms of COVID and the impact of COVID on citizen engagement. But I think the initial Smart D8 launch was done by webinar. You know, it was widely promoted to our social media channels. I think tapping into the ecosystem and the existing communities that are already there, I think was really beneficial. Like D8 has a wide variety of local business communities, you know, communities focused on community development projects, and there's a number of youth organizations in the area too. And I think the ongoing support from all of these different community groups will be, you know, central to the success of D8, because you can't have a pilot that involves people if you don't have the connections with the people. So making the connections is one of the most important things.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Nicola. Okay, maybe a question for Edward. Your Smart Docklands is the most mature district of the group here. You've been around the block for some time, and then Sandyford as well to Connor. So, you know, we're not the only ones doing smart districts here in Dublin or in Ireland. So they exist in other places internationally. Anything you're seeing internationally that, you know what, we should be trying to do here locally in Dublin? So Edward, maybe comment on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think you probably put it up in your slide earlier on about like the incarnation of living labs is not a new concept. So that has been around, whether we had the likes of Catapult in the UK, or I think in Copenhagen, the Solutions Lab there. So we did manage to pick off the best bits and kick off the first of these smart districts. So I think on the reverse side, we were starting to see how we're exporting the concept of smart districts beyond the shores of Ireland to elsewhere. But on the note of picking up from international best practices, I think something that we all started to realize over, let's say, the past 2-3 years of, you know, we've had these amazing pilots that are getting kicked off the ground, and we've managed to capture lessons learned. We started to realize, like, okay, there's this next step of sitting it under strategy of whether it's our local authorities or other partner organizations. So I think that's a big key one that we started to realize, and that all of us have been making steps to try and seed that, and probably segues quite well to the scaling up session tomorrow for everyone to catch that as well.
Okay, Connor, any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah,
international best practice.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's interesting in Ireland, and certainly our approach. It's almost sometimes like this new technology is over there, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll stay in my lane, and don't you know, distract me, basically. Whereas in other countries, maybe they're a little bit better at, you know, the head of a certain department might look to adapt a new technology, and they would take that on themselves. And there's pros and cons to both. You know, sometimes that approach could be diluted. In this way, you know, our way, the Smart Dublin team, we have a good oversight of lots of different services. But sometimes, you know, and I think it is starting to happen now that we're seeing champions coming forward from different departments. But that took a little bit of a huge amount of effort really on our part to kind of build up confidence in what we're doing. And I'm glad to see it's starting to take on, but maybe other countries were a little bit of a step ahead in kind of how they approached it from the get-go. But it certainly does seem to be taking on now in Ireland, which is great to see.
Okay, super. Okay, mindful of time here, so maybe two other tricky questions for the guys. Collaboration across the districts. I know there's healthy peer pressure going on here. Maybe to Kieran and possibly Barry, you know, we've got 5 districts. Smart Tourism is a thematic program, and we're all under the Smart Dublin banner trying to deliver a smart city. Can you give some practical examples as to how you collaborate together? So Barry or Kieran, maybe?
So when DCU were building the 3D models of the campus, we had no expertise in that, but Smart Docklands has. Edward, Veronica, Alexandra, and they were able to fast forward us on that road very quickly. Huge benefit. Also, I would sit on the Smart Balberg steering group. I actually learned more from that than GIF, that's for sure. They're doing amazing things there. They didn't even mention the drone project, which is the biggest in the world, which is amazing. And then every fortnight we would have spotlights where we would sit down as all the Smart Dublin team, and we'd go into great detail about our own projects and give questions and answers. So we bring everybody together. We don't leave anybody behind.
I'll just jump in there as well. Yeah, so very similar to what Kieran said. So, I mean, the level of collaboration is inbuilt into the model that we have. So, you know, we represent the region of Dublin, so all of the local authorities, not just DCC in our Smart Tourism Program. Very much like Kieran said, we also have an LA forum that we started. So that's the last Friday of every month. We get together with all of the tourism officers from every local authority, and we share best practice all the time. Also, whenever we're doing a big project, like for example, writing the Digital Trails Toolkit, we will appoint one person from each local authority to sit on that working group that drives that project. And that's really important, because that means that each of them is bringing in their own expertise, but they're also buying into the future success of whatever project we're doing. So yeah, like it's very similar to other speakers. It's completely entrenched in everything we do, both in terms of governance and actual project management to delivery as well.
Okay, super. Thanks, Barry. Final question. Maybe Nicola, Edward, and Kieran, come in again if you want. You know, the secret sauce for success. It's all about people management, managing stakeholders. Each of you described an ecosystem: industry, government, citizens, academia. They're coming at these urban challenges with diverse perspectives. Any nuggets you could share with the audience on how to get those actors, you know, really working together? So maybe Nicola, do you want to start?
I suppose for me, it's about a clear vision from the start, making sure that all the stakeholders are kind of on the same page, and to keep communicating that the whole way throughout the project. So managing expectations, you know, ensuring that you have the right people from the right organizations participating on the project or on the pilot. I think that really leads to the success of the overall projects and program.
Yeah, I agree with Nicola.
Super. Okay.
So
go ahead, Kieran. Yep.
Understanding each different stakeholder's perspective. They're all different. It can be aligned, but they all have different expectations. Their objectives can be different, and their timelines especially can be different. Academia can be so different to industry. Now, but they all overlap in some place. So once you understand where they overlap, that's the sweet spot, and that's where you get the fantastic collaboration.
Okay. And Edward, any last thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, completely agree with what the both have said. I think back to that point about how this is inbuilt in our Smart Dublin model, it just really promotes conversations across the aisle with different groups. And I mean, just being part of this webinar, I'm thinking in my head, it's like, okay, I've got to reach out to Barry for this Clear Channel project, like right after this. Like it starts to make the connections really quick, and again, aligning and just having those constant conversations with different stakeholders help to incubate, that vision, shared vision moving forward. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Maynard, we're going to wrap up. That's our panel discussion. I see some questions coming in, but what we might do afterwards is any open questions, we'll address them in writing afterwards. I think there's a closing slide, Maynard, to show, if it's handy. It's just a thank you one. Okay. So I think we're 5 minutes over our allotted time, and we didn't lose too many attendees. So big thank you to multiple people here. So big thank you to our producers. You know who you are. So Maynard Gallagher, Aisling Lennon, Frank Farrell. These kind of events don't happen magically. So a lot of effort gone in the background. Big thank you to our speakers. Connor, Kieran, Barry, Nicola, Aisling, and Edward. And a big thank you to the audience for attending, and a huge thank you to our collaborators. You know, each of the speakers spoke about an ecosystem that's truly active across each of the districts and all the programs. And it's thanks to that collaboration that we've heard successful stories from all the speakers today. So that's all from us. The session will be recorded, and we'll share with you the recording of that very shortly. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.